Welcome to a bonus episode of Ryan Flies. What makes it a bonus episode? I have no idea. I'm just calling it that so y'all think it's special. But I had too much footage from the last batch to cram it all into one episode. So instead, I've broken some stuff out that really belonged on its own episode. I've gathered it here. What kind of stuff? Wheels, tires, landing gear, brakes, motor mount, all kinds of crap. And I've loaded it into this episode. Stay tuned. I know it looks like a bad idea, but hear me out. I want to. I'm going to give up some space, which, as we all know, is a precious commodity around here. But I'm doing so that I am more free to work on the underside. I might potentially be able to wheel this thing back and forth a little bit, depending on whether I need space in front or behind. And realistically, it's an item that I gotta get hit off the punch list. Simply put, mounting antennas is getting high up on my priority list, and I can't do it while this thing's on sawhorses, or at least I don't think I can. What's that look like? Well, I gotta get the motor mount mounted, then I got to get the gear legs in, then we got to get the wheels and tires on. I think it's a lot of work. I looked at the plans, it looks like a lot of work, but I'm gonna start, and you know me, I'll just keep working until I hit a roadblock. Well, first roadblock identified. That didn't take long. I haven't set any of these rivets because I don't know what I'm doing for my cowl attachment at this point in time, and I've sort of just kicked that can down the road. Well, here I've come upon it. There's going to be some rivets that are very hard to hit if I don't do it before I get the engine mount on. I spent a half hour or so on the internet and looking at the plans. I think I'm safe to set all of these and maybe even a couple of these where it gets tight and can still leave options open for the future. So I'm gonna do that, and then we'll get back to the engine mount. So I got bolts in up top, and now I've got to drill some holes down below. And I can see the pilot holes on these two outer corners, and we're close. Hey buddy boy. We're not perfect, but that's sort of by design, kind of. The holes that we have here, I believe, are roughly 3/16, and they're going to get widened to 3/8, meaning any discrepancy between the firewall and the mount will be eaten up in that additional diameter of hole, if you're close enough, and I think I am. I'm going to start by drilling some pilot holes in the bottom center here. We'll get some bolts to secure that, then I'll move to the corners, and then I think we just play a rotation of widening these holes up step by step. I'm going to move from a AN3 bolt to an AN4 bolt, and then eventually I think we're going to wind up at an AN6 bolt. So this is the first one, upsizing it now to a number 4 bolt. it's done. It's on. And it was a lot of work. Had to break out some secret weapons as far as drills go. But in all, it wasn't that difficult. It was just, I mean, it was a lot of work, but it wasn't like... Went ahead and lifted the plane a couple inches. This is right about the height that it'll be at with the rubber on. I think I might be able to get the tires on without having to prop it up anymore. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. This whole misadventure in landing gear could be just that. Only one way to find out. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt these in. They've just been resting here, friction fit, for the last couple weeks. Still trying to modify these brackets. Apparently, again, they were designed for a different brake system. They don't fit. It's taken quite a long time to figure that out, and that they need to be modified. And now I'm just trying to modify them in a manner that looks fairly intentional. I got them clamped together because presumably whatever I do to one, I got to do to the other. So luckily I can just clamp them together and modify them both at the same time. I think I got a little more filing and grinding, and then we should be back to moving forward. If you're confused, you're not alone. So was I, incredibly. So let me try to explain. Along with the brakes and axle and wheel and all of that is this wheel pant mount, this aluminum bracket that you see. Except it was designed to fit around a different brake. Except Vans doesn't tell you this. You just got to figure it out by hours of research online. That brake had slightly different dimensions, and so now that bracket gets sandwiched in the caliper of this brake. And so what I found out is that you're actually going to have to modify that bracket in order to allow for movement of the caliper halves. So what I wound up doing is marking it on both sides and then eventually clamping both brackets together as you previously saw in an attempt to modify this in a way that looked fairly intentional. Now, I tried to explain all this on screen, but apparently my microphone came unplugged and I was left with this. So, before we get back to grinding, for your viewing pleasure, me falling over on a stool. Look, I know these really need to be here, but in my defense, this was before your last comment. If you're looking at that brake caliper thinking, that thing's on upside down, well, you're not wrong, but the instructions say that you're going to have to wind up taking that fitting out and making one right and one left. Turns out that's not true. The new brakes come with one right and one left, and I wound up having to swap these. No part of this has really been much of a success in a traditional sense, but it's on. Other than having to modify this piece and add some washers to space it, is indicated on the plans, but surprised me that I kind of felt like I shouldn't need the washers. Just trying to conceptualize how all this goes together, because none of it's really shown on the plans. It was rough. I got my wheel built, the first one, with the tube in it, and now I'm going to pack this thing full of grease. Then I'll see about getting the wheel on the axle. I want to expand on those thoughts while y'all watch me play with lube here. A simple exploded view of this section would have done this portion of the project a huge service. It took me, I think, like 4 to 5 hours in order to get this first one patched together and on. That includes the whole debacle about researching and modifying those mounts. The second wheel, I think, took less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes from start to finish. One of the reasons why the camera work is so shoddy and patchy and missing is because I really had to focus on what I was doing, and I didn't have the capability to manage 2 projects at once like I'm usually doing. It was frustrating and aggravating and confusing all at once. However, once you get it together and once you see how it works, it's actually quite simple, and then you kind of have this aha moment. Again, why the second one just flew together. Anyways, back to the lube. The instructions say to use Aeroshell 22. I have Aeroshell 5. I was going to hit the pause button and get some 22 ordered up. But I looked on the internet and there was actually a discussion by people much smarter than me. And it seems that Aeroshell 5 will work just fine for this very use. So I am basically just squeezing grease into every crack until it squeezes out every other crack. That sounds awful, man. Now I just got to mark that nut, drill a hole through the axle, and do it all over again. don't get me wrong. I love spending time basically squatting on the garage floor, but if you can do this at a workbench, you might as well. That's something I learned the first time around. It's moments like these that you get to take a break and reflect on how much you've gotten done, how far you've come. They always seem to be a little more impactful at the end of a long workday. Not only have you just accomplished a great deal of work, but you stare at the project a little bleary-eyed and start to see it in a new light. Sometimes you wonder if you should hang up the towel and call it a night, or keep on just a little bit further, as foolish as it might be, to see if you can just get one more stretch, one more little bit. The project has allowed me to know myself a little bit better and know when I have a little more left in me and know when I need to just call it quits. I am really sort of in go mode trying to get this last tire on, which means unfortunately the next time you see me might be at the end of this nose wheel. Or maybe I still don't know my own limits. Holy crap. It's doing this on its own. It's on its 3 wheels. I had the sawhorses down. I thought it would be tail heavy without a motor, but the tail's not even. It's got. It's got a saw pony just in case, but it's off the ground. It's on its legs. Alright, as you saw, it's up on its wheels. And that was a heck of a build session. There was a lot more involved in getting it to this point than I thought. But we're here, and it's another huge milestone in this build. It's fantastic. I know I'm going to regret it, absolutely. It's bigger, it takes up more space, it's taller. But I think I needed to do this in order to get to the underside, to start to mount antennas, and really to fully flesh out the electronic system, I think. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself. Speaking of which, that's what we're going to get back to, not this episode, but next one. I will pull that harness back out of the plane, and we'll start crimping some connectors, and we'll continue inching our way along on the electrical system. Today, I've taken several hours to clean up the mess that I created over the past couple of days working on this thing. I got a little bit more to do, but it's going to be nice to have a clean workshop and get moving on some electronics once again. Alright, as I finish up cleaning this place up, why don't you do the usual, like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and leave me some comments. Let me know what you're working on and what you think of this thing. Anyways, we'll talk to you next time on Ryan Flies. See you soon.